Okay, so this Mishnah, we are about to start the third parak. Again, trying to make a push to finish before Pirim. It's the first Mishnah in the third parak. I think I may have just said that. And it deals with the reading of the Megillah standing or sitting. We just did this already today, so I'm not going to go into the whole thing. And the fact that your yot say even if two people read it at the same time, and the minhag of making a bracha at the end of the Megillah reading, whether you say it or not. And then it went into the different times we read with different amounts of people. On Mondays and Thursdays in the Mincha on Shabbat, you read with 3. On Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed you read with 4. On Yom Tov you read with 5. On Yom Kippur you read with 6. And on Shabbat you read with 7. On all the other days apart from Yom Kippur, apart from Shabbat, you cannot add and you cannot lessen the amount of olim. It has to be 3, 4, 5, or 6. On Shabbat, you can't lessen, but you can increase. You can have more than 7 olim. And it also mentions the minhag of that used to be the halacha of adding the first person who got the aliyah. We make a bracha before reading, then they give aliyot to other people, and the last guy. So on Yom Kippur they have 6 aliyot. The first guy would say the first bracha, and the last guy would say the end bracha. And no one would say brachot in the middle. And then we also mentioned that there's no haftarah on Mincha Shabbat or any of these days, apart from on Yom Tov, Yom Kippur, and Chol Hamoed. Okay, so the Gemara says, Tana, ma she'en ken b'Torah. The Braita says what is not so of the Torah. Now the Gemara explains that it's referring to the first halacha in the Mishnah, that with regards to the Megillah, it can be read sitting or standing, whereas the Torah has to be read standing. So that's the Braita saying that. With the Mishnah just talked about Megillah, can be read sitting or standing. The Braita comes on and says, but Torah can only be read standing. Minani Mili, where do we know this from? Am Rabbi Abau Damaka. Where do you know this from? Rabbi Abau says, Damaka, the pasuk says, Vata po amod imadi. And you are here, or you stand here with me. When God speaks with Moshe Rabbeinu, he says stand. Vama Rabbi Abahu imale mikra katu yev shalomo kivechol af kodesh baruch hu b'amidah. Says Rabbi Abahu, if it wasn't said, you wouldn't be able to say it because it would sound heretical. It comes across from this pasuk that if God says stand here with me, it is inferring that God is also standing. When we know God obviously doesn't stand, but it's coming to teach a mashal and just know that we would never be able to say God is standing, and the fact is that the Torah says it hints towards that a deeper message, but that we wouldn't be able to say he's literally standing. V'amar Rabbi Abahu minayin lerav shelo yeshev al gabei mita v'yishaneh letamido al gabei kalka shnema avata po amod imadi. From where do we know, says Rabbi Abahu, that a Rav shouldn't sit on the bench or the bed, but it sounds like it's really a bench, and should teach his Talmud when they're sitting on the floor, from the same pasuk. From the Ram. You here should stand with me. When the rabbi is teaching, he should be standing as well, or not at least be sitting. So Rashi explains, Ela or shnehem al gabei mita or shnehem al gabei kaka. Either both of them sit down, or both of them sit on the floor. Either both of them on the bench or both on the floor, and you shouldn't have one of them higher than the other. Okay. Alright, let me continue. Tan Rabbanan, the rabbis taught. From the days of Moshe until the days of Rabban Gamliel, they would only learn Torah standing. After the death of Rabban Gamliel, an illness came down to the world. Some weakness came down to the world. And from then on in, they would sit, learning Torah, sitting, and not standing anymore. And that's what it means when it says in it's quoting Sota here, seems like to be a Mishnah. Mishemet de Rabban Gamliel batel kvod Torah. After he died, the cover, the honor of the Torah, died with it, or was cancelled. The Bach makes an addition here and says Rabban Gamliel Hazaken, so we know which one it is. It's not any Rabban Gamliel, it's Rabban Gamliel Hazaken, and it would seem that in the last time we mentioned Rabban Gamliel, there's also other corrections as well to that we're talking about Rabban Gamliel Hazaken, the elder, as opposed to the later Rabban Gamliels, because there were a few. So since Rabban Gamliel died, the cover of the Torah was cancelled, and that means there was weakness in the world, and they weren't able to stand and learn anymore, so they sat. One pasuk says, and I shall sit on the mountain. This pasuk is from Devarim as well. When I went up to the mountain, Moshe Rabbeinu went down, it says, Ve'eshev b'har. And I sat on the mountain. But another pasuk, also in Devarim, says, Moshe says, I was standing on the mountain. Amarav, Amar Rav Omed Lomed Yoshev V'Shoneh. Meaning, when he was learning, he would stand, and when he was teaching and learning himself on his own, Yoshev V'Shoneh. So it would be like this: Amar Rav Omed V'Lomed Yoshev V'Shoneh. So basically, what that means is Rav says when he was learning, he would stand. When he was learning from Kodesh Baruch, he would stand. Yoshev V'Shoneh. But when he'd then sit when he was learning on his own, meaning Kodesh Baruch would teach him halacha, and then when he was learning it, he would sit. Rabbi Chanina amar lo omed v'lo yoshev, ela soche. Rabbi Chanina says, no, there's a different way of resolving the contradiction. So as we're continuing, Rabbi Chanina amar lo omed v'lo yoshev, ela shoche. He would, what does it mean he would stand and sit? Actually, it was something in the middle. That's how Rabbi Chanina understands it, that he would be bending over and bowing the whole time. And as such, that's why there's seemingly a contradiction. Rabbi Yochanan amar en yeshiva ela lo shel ikva. When it says yeshiva that Moshe was sitting on the mountain, it didn't mean sitting on the mountain. It meant that he was mitakev, he was being delayed there for that time. And when it says he's standing, he literally was standing. Shnema v'tishu kadesh yamim rabim. And you shall dwell, or you shall be held up in Kadesh for many, many days. When they were in the Midbar, in the desert after leaving Egypt, the 40 years. Rav amar rakot mu'mad v'kashot miyushav. When would he stand? When things, Rav says, when they were easy to understand. And he was quick to understand them. Kashot miyushav, but something was difficult to understand. He would sit down so he'd be able to concentrate better. Okay, now, normally when someone reads something, and two people reading something at the same time, we normally have the concept of trei kale lo mishtame, two voices can't be heard. And our Mishnah doesn't say that. Our Mishnah said, Kara echad, kara shnaim yetzu. One read, two read, you yotze. V'chulei. We need to understand how that's possible. Okay? We're now turning over to Kaf Aleph Amud Bet. And it brings another Midrash, not Mishnah, Midrash, Braita, Tana. Ma she'en ken b'Torah. What? That isn't the case in Torah. In the Torah, if two people are reading, you cannot fulfill your obligation. Rather, it has to be one person. So, okay. We now have a Mishnah and a Tosefta. Tanu Rabbanan. B'Torah, Achad Koreh, V'achat metargim. When you're reading the Torah, when you read the Torah, you have one person reading and one person translating. When they used to have a read pasuk by pasuk and then translate it in the end into Aramaic in each pasuk. And as long as there's not one reading and two people translating. Uvanavi, but with regards to prophets, when that was read in the Haftarah, you can have one guy reading and two people translating. As long as there are not two people reading from the Haftarah and two people translating. Right, so Rashi explains on the first one that you have one person translating, one person reading, two people translating. Regards to the Torah, Rashi explains for sure, he says, you shouldn't have two people reading the Torah. It says you shouldn't have the Torah should be read one and translated by one. And then the Gemara goes on and says, and for sure you shouldn't have one person reading, two people translating. And Rashi comes and say, and even more so, you shouldn't have two people reading and two people translating, because, and he explains why, like I said, two voices can't be heard. With regards to Navi, we can be more lenient. One can read and two people can translate. Why? Because Rashi explains the translation of the prophets into Aramaic was only for the women and the ignorant ones who couldn't speak Hebrew back then, and therefore it wasn't intrinsic. And the Targum is, the translation was in the common spoken language of the Bavlim. So with regards to the translation of the Torah, why can't two people read if it's just to translate? Because the Torah, we want the simple ones and the women to understand. Why? Because it's all to do with mitzvot. We want the women and the simple, or the multitude of people to understand mitzvot. But with regards to Nevi'im is maybe tochot, reprimands, and the future events, and comfort when we're in the parashot of the Haftarah of the comfort after Tishba, but is not needed in daily life for mitzvah observance, and as such, they were lenient to allow two people to read the translation, even if that meant people wouldn't be able to hear properly. Megilah afil 10 kroim ו10 מתרגמים. מה תמה? כיוון דחביבה יהווה דעתי ושמיעי. Says the Gemara with regard to Hallel and Megillah, even 10 people can read, and 10 people can translate, and you're still saying, my Tama, what's the reason? The 10 people reading, 10 people translating, how is it possible? Kevan de Chaviva, since it's a beloved mitzvah to the people, Yahweh Datayu Vishmei, they will make sure that because they love the mitzvah so much, they will make sure to be more attentive. And even though 10 people are reading it and 10 people are translating it, even if that is that extreme, it can even be more. Yeah, we're not specifically taking the number 10. Even so, you'll be fulfill one's obligation. Okay, now the next clause in the Mishnah, a place where they had the minhag of making a bracha, you should make a bracha. What bracha is it talking about? We make a sheikh l'shana before. Is it talking about that? You have to make a bracha before. So what's it talking about? We are now, 1 second, I should count it how many lines down. We are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 lines down. 8 lines down. Amar Abaye, lo shanu ella lachra. Aval lefaneh mitzvah levarech. Says Abaye, what's this clause in the Mishnah talking about? This clause in the Mishnah is talking about a bracha after the reading. Harava to Rivain is a longer bracha. But for sure isn't talking about the bracha beforehand, because it's a mitzvah to make a bracha. Brikta mitzvot. We make a bracha before doing mitzvot. Dama Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Kol mitzvot nevarech alein over le'asiyatan. How do we know you make brachas beforehand, before doing mitzvah? Because in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, who says the name of Shmuel, all the mitzvot you make bracha before them, before doing them. Kulam mevarech alein over le'asiyatan, before fulfilling them. My mashma dahai over. What does it mean over? We know that lemaisa practically it means before you do the mitzvah, but the Gemara now is going to discuss what does it mean that kol mitzvot kulan mevarch alen over la'asiyatan. What does it mean that you make all the brachas over to their doing? Over ein vav vet reish. What does the over mean? My mashma dai over lishna dekumehu lidaktumehu. Gemara says, what does it mean over? Does it really mean to say it beforehand? Because la'avo mashu is to pass something. Amarav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amaka v'yirach some achimatz derech kikav yavo et kushi. So it says, achimatz ran derech kikav through the courtyard or through the plain. Could also mean the plain. V'yavo et kushi, past the kushi. And there it could mean something else. 1 second. Okay. Abai mahacha. Abai says from a different place. Abai amar mahacha. Vu aval lifnehem. This is referring to when Yaakov and Esav are meeting after Yaakov's time in slavery, or basically in slavery, by Laban's house. He's bowing down in front of Esav numerous times until he's past him. Abai Amar, he passed before them. Maybe you can actually say it from another place. What the word over means. This is referring to a pasuk in Micha, and the king shall pass before them, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu will be at the head. God will be at the head, referring to I believe we're referring to the final redemption. Okay, so now we found out that over means that always before, and therefore we now learned that you make a bracha before the reading. So the Gemara says, however, the Mishnah is saying that the bracha after is up to the minhag of the place. I've never been in a place which doesn't make a bracha after. I don't think anyone doesn't do it before. Doesn't do after before nowadays. Everyone makes a bracha according to halacha before the Megillah reading. There's discussion after, and all I'm saying is that as far as I know, there's no communities today which don't make a bracha after. Okay, now the Gemara, out of interest, asks, okay, so what are the brachas do we say before? Not out of interest, it wants to clarify the halacha, but it's going a little bit of a tangent because we were talking about the bracha after. Now we're going to ask, what's the bracha before the Megillah reading? Lefanea, my mevarech. What bracha do you make before the reading of the Megillah? Rav Sheshet Katrazia, Rav Sheshet from Katrazia, Ikla Lekami Rav Ashi. He went to visit Rav Ashi. Ubarich Manach. He made a bracha of Manach. What's Manach? It's Rashi Teva for Mikra Megilah Mem. Nun is Al Hanisim, and the Chet is Shehechianu. Okay, Manach. Lachea Maimavarich. What bracha do you make afterwards? Now this is it. This is the one we say today. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. And there's the word akel here. I assume it's a discussion whether this is in the girsa, whether this is in the actual bracha today, because it's in brackets. So Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. Akel harav et irenu, fights our battles. Vadanit dinenu, and judges those that judge us. Vanokem et nikmatenu. Judges our judgments that we need to judge. Vanokem et nikmatenu, and avenges our vengeances. Vanifar lanu mitzarenu, and pays or claims payment from our enemies, and pays back those who are the enemies of our spirit, meaning punishes them. Hashem, blessed are you, O Lord, and who is paid off from who pays off Israel from all the enemies. Rava Amar Akel Moshiach. Rava adds Hakel ha-Moshiach at the end of the bracha. And meaning not Baruch Atah Hashem Hanifra Yisrael Mikol Tzarim. Rather, he would say Baruch Atah Hashem Baruch Atah Hashem Akel HaMoshiach. Rav Papa says Hilkach, because we don't have a clear Masorah or tradition of what the end of the bracha should be. He says let's combine them both. Hilkach Nimurin Hu Letavai, we say both them, and then the end of the bracha will be Baruch Atah Hashem Hanifra Yisrael Mikol Tzarihem Ha'el HaMoshiach. He says now you combine both, and you say blessed are you Lord, and Hanifra Yisrael Mikol Tzarihem, who pays Israel from his enemies, Ha'el HaMoshiach, the God of salvation, or who saves us. Okay, now we're moving on to the last section we mentioned, which is talking about the aliyot, the amount of aliyot people get when they read from the Torah on different days. On Mondays, Thursdays, and Mincha Shabbat, you have 3 people who get aliyot. Why 3? Who do the 3 represent? Why is it number 3? Amarav Asi, Keneged Torah, Nevim, Kutuvim. It's number 3 because of the 3 parts of the Tanakh: Torah, prophets, and writings. Torah, Nevim, Kutuvim. Rava Mar Keneged Kohen, Levim, Yisraelim. Rava says actually a reference to the 3 types of Jews: a Kohen, a Levi, and a Israel. Elahad, Tani Rav Shimi, Em Pochatin, Miyud, Psukim, Bevet HaKnesset, Vidaber Ole, Menaminyan, Hani Asara, Keneged Mi. When Rav Shimi taught that you can't have less than 10 psukim read at every reading, meaning in total 3 people read in total 10 psukim, and then it also adds Vidaber Ole Min HaMinyan, and even the pasuk Vidaber Shema Moshe Limor adds up as one of the 10 psukim. The Gemara then asks, Hani Asara Kenegemi, why is it 10? Why is it 10, the minimum amount of Pesukim? Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Keneg Asara Batlanim Shabbat HaKnesset. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that it's a reference to the 10 Batlanim. Now, a Batlan is a time waster today. That's what it means today. A Batlan back then was a positive thing. It was someone who wouldn't be working, would be in the Beit Midrash learning all day. You need to have 10 Batlanim in the Beit Knesset. It's a praiseworthy thing to have. Rav Yosef said no, it's 10 psukim because the 10 commandments which are said over to Moshe at Sinai, not because necessarily the mitzvot are more important, but rather because they were said at a higher level of the 10 commandments. Rav Levi adds another thing. It's in comparison or in reference to the 10 praises which David said in Sefer Tehillim. Now, it's in brackets. And the Haggadah Tzionim says it's in brackets because it doesn't make sense, because there are a lot more than 10 Hilulim, 10 praises in the Sefer Tehillim, and therefore must not be the correct reading of the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Keneged Asara Mamrot Shebehem Nivra Olam. Rabbi Yochanan says there's 10 psukim. Why? Because of the 10 expressions that God used to create the world. Now, tangent. What were the 10 things that God said? Hai Ninhu. Which are these 10? Hey Ninhu. Vama Debreshit Hani Tishavu. V'yomer Bereshit Hani Tishavu. One second. So it says like this: V'yomer Bereshit. Hai Ninhu. V'yomer Bereshit Hani Tishavu. The V'yomers of Bereshit are only 9, so we only have 9 expressions. Gemara answers, Bereshit Nami Mamar Hu. Bereshit is also an expression of creation. The meaning Bereshit Brash Eyes, he created the heavens and the earth. It doesn't say V'yomer, but it's an expression as well. Even though it doesn't say V'yomer, so there must have been God saying something there as well. How do you know so? Because of what it says in Tehillim, Nami Mamar Hu. Tichtiv Devar Hashem Shamayim Nasu V'rach Piv Kol Svam. In the word of God, the heavens were made, and through the breath of His mouth, all the legions were created as well, the stars. Amarava Rishon Shikra Hashem Meshubach Sheni Shikra Rava Rishon Shikra Arba Meshubach Sheni Shikra Arba Meshubach Shishi Shikra Arba Meshubach Rishon Shikra Arba Meshubach Tadam B'Shosh Kubot Sheshlosh Sain. Sorry, we'll stop there. So we'll explain. Rava says, right, if you have 10 psukim divided by 3, it's 3.333. Someone's going to have to read 4. Another person's going to have to read 4. Sorry, 2 people are going to have to read 3 and one's going to have to read 4. Who should be the one who's reading 4, right? 3, 3, and 4 is 10. Sorry, bad math there. I was doing the wrong thing. But 3, 3, and 4. Who is the one who's going to read 4 psukim? Okay? So it says like this. It says, it's praiseworthy, Meshubach, if the first one reads 4. It's praiseworthy if the second guy reads 4. And it's praiseworthy if the third person reads 4. Meaning, it seems like there's no preference. Rather, they... So Rashi actually explains that's only if the parasha is short. It's obviously more praiseworthy if all of them read 4, but the minimum is 10 psukim, and sometimes it's only going to be 10 psukim because the way the Torah is split up, you can't just make up aliyot and divide the psukim to end in different places. There's specific places where it has to end. So if possible, you do 4, 4, 4. But the Gemara is now telling us that it's praiseworthy for the first guy to read 4, the second guy to read 4, the third guy to read 4, and now we're going to explain it. Shishi Shikar Arba Meshubach, that's what we said, and now we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 lines down. Now we're going to explain proof from how it's praiseworthy. The first one reads, second one reads, third one reads 4. Rishon Shikra Arba Meshubach, the one who reads, the first one reads 4 is praiseworthy. How do you know this? Tanan, as it's taught in a Mishnah. בשלוש קופות של 13 שבהן תורמים את הלשכה והיה כתוב עליהם א' ב' ג' לידע איזה מהם נתרמה הראשון להקריב ממנה הראשון שמצווה בראשון. So how do you know that the first guy is best? Because of what they used to have in the temple. This is according to a Mishnah in Shkalim and Yoma. I believe it's in Yoma, but okay. They would have different boxes for the collection of the Truma, of the Masechet Shekel for the Korbanot, and they fill them up, and they write Aleph Bet Gimel in them. They have a huge pile of coins, and they fill up 3 boxes for the Korbanot, and they write Aleph Bet Gimel on each box. Why? But the first one they write Aleph, the second one they write Bet, and the third one they write Gimel. Why? To find out which one's filled first. Why is it so important to know which one's filled first? Because the idea of what? To give korbanot first from the money in the first box, because the mitzvah is in the first, and therefore we can learn if the 3 olim, it's best to give the first guy the 4 pesukim, because it's praiseworthy to always go with the first. Now, we're however still going to say that the second and third guy is praiseworthy to give him 4 as well. So what's the proof of that? We're now in the first widest line in the middle. Emsai Shikar Arba Mushubach. The middle guy who reads 4 pesukim is also praiseworthy. The Tanya, as it is taught in a Braita, Elmul Pnei HaMenorah Ya'iru. In the direction of the face of the menorah they shall light. Melamed Shemitzadet Pneihem Kalpei Ner Maravi. Maravi Kalpei Shechina. This teaches that the candles would be facing, or the wicks would be facing the middle flame, and the middle flame would face the Shekhinah. That's why we call the Ner Maravi, because it would point towards the Marav, towards the Kodesh Koshim. But the point is like this, that from here we hear that what's the most important candle, the middle one, and so too the most important Oleh is the second guy, so he should be given 4 pesukim. Emsai Shikra Arba Meshubach Titania, we said that. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan Mekan Shemsai Meshubach. Rabbi Yochanan would say that from there we know that the middle guy is the praiseworthy. Vacharon Shikra Arba Meshubach, and the last guy who read 4 pesukim, he's the praiseworthy one. Because of you go up in holiness and don't go down. Meaning, you start with 3, Second guy says 3 as well, and then you go up, because Ma'alim, because you go up in holiness, and you don't go down. Rav Papa ikra l'Beit Knesset the Abi Gover. Rav Papa visited the Beit Knesset of Avi Gover. Rishon Arba v'Shavchei Rav Papa, and he read for the first guy 4 psukim, and Rav Papa praised him. Okay. Okay, now let us continue. We're now quoting the fact that you don't add on Olim on the day where we have 3 aliyot. You don't add, you don't take away. Tana apotech mevarech lefanea, v'achotem mevarech lachera. Va'idna techulu mevarech lefanim lachera, haynu ulachera, haynu tama tetakinu rabanan gezer mishum hanichzem mishum hayotzim. So we have a braita. The first guy makes a bracha, and the third guy, or the last guy to get the aliyah, makes a bracha at the end of all the reading. And then it says Va'idna, and now if you notice, if you're following along with the daf, there's an ayin there. The ayin guides us towards lacha. Va'idna means that now this is what we do, and that's also how the Shulchan Aruch rules. Va'idna d'chulu mevarech lefanei lacha. Now every oleh makes 2 brachas. The bracha before Baruch Hu et Hashem Barach, with Baruch Hashem Asher Barach Banu, right? And the last, as you finish you say Baruch Hashem Shenatan Lanu. Why does that happen? Hainu Tama Takinu Rabbanan, because the rabbis fixed this decree. Because of people, they made a decree because of those leaving and coming in the middle. What would they think? If you come in the middle of reading and don't hear bracha before the next oleh, you come in the middle and it's a Shabbat, and you're walking during Shlishi, and the next guy, back in the old minhag way of doing things, he would walk in and see what? There's a guy reading, getting up there and not making a bracha. Oh, you don't make brachas over Torah. Or a guy who leaves in the middle after hearing the first bracha and doesn't hear, and leaves after the third guy finishes and doesn't hear bracha in the end. He's going to think you don't make a bracha after reading Torah, even though they are going to make a bracha at the end. And due to this, made the fix that every person makes a bracha before and after, lest someone leaves in the middle and misunderstands the halacha. Okay, we're going to stop there. We've done another daf. Basically, we're a few lines short of finishing this daf, but we've made a lot of time as well. Shukach, guys.